Set isn't necessarily the bad guy. He's not even a guy. He is a principle. When you get up in the morning and you get your podcast going and then suddenly your computer's not opening up, that is set in action. Anything that is opposition is set. So anything, your goal in life, according to the esoteric traditions, are to return back to the source. Anything that gets in the way of that, providing opposition, is set in action. But we need set. You know, I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to use science. I think science is very valuable. But I'm also operating with the understanding that I'm operating with a limited understanding. Science can't see everything yet. We don't know everything yet. There is more. So there's a case to be made for some stuff. And so as a mystic, I'm going within for answers. I'm not going without. I'm not running to YouTube. I'm not going to the Bright Insight YouTube channel for my answers.
You're not?
No, I'll go to academia first, but ultimately I'll go within. And if it's not right within, it's not going to be right without.
How do you know if it's right within, though?
You know, there's a knowing. It's gnosis. And ultimately, it's not about what's right or wrong. Who gets to determine what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad? Religions, they tell us, oh, Jesus is good, the devil's bad. Well, Jesus, if he is the way, if he's the salvation back to the Creator, he's the principle of return to source. There's a source. We come from the source. We're here. We return. It's the same principle in ancient Egypt as Horus. Horus represents the return to source. Horus's opposition in that story is Set. Setian forces, which become Satan, which become the devil. Set is the principle of opposition. So our goal in humanity is to have this experience. According to the ancient mystery schools, the Pythagorean mystery schools, they viewed it as, it's like we're mirrors of the divine. We are extensions of the divine experiencing itself through us in this universe, and we are going to return back to source. But some people believe that in order to do that, you have to prepare. There's a process. The ancient Egyptians had this whole, afterlife carved out for them. They had to go through processes. And like I said, like the fourth way, Gurdjieff teachings, you got to start preparing now to leave an impression on your consciousness with your ka and with your ba, which are terms we don't use anymore. Mm-hmm. We just have a soul. For the ancient Egyptians, they had 9 different aspects, and the ka and the ba would reunite in the afterlife and come together to form what's known as a ak. And Ak is the light. It's the fully realized, illuminated individual.
I understand what you mean when you talk about religions telling us good and bad or this or that and defining things for us. In some cases, it's strictly just based on a belief system or something like that, meaning it's not inherent. Let me explain that. To me, when you start to say there's how do we determine what's good and bad, we don't. Like there's things that can't define that for us. To me, when you get it down to brass tacks and just look at the world, remove religion, remove governments, remove spiritual teachings, whatever. There's a lot of gray area for sure, but there's certain things that I think are common sense with what we gotta, what we gotta face in the world. For an example, if you go out, if you leave here right now and you go find a woman on the street and against her consent, have your way with her, that's wrong. I'm willing to sit here and say on the record on this podcast, inherently, if you're looking at good and bad, that's bad. If you went and some dude on the street, you shot him to death for no reason. Perfectly good guy, you didn't know him, you just shot him to death. That's wrong. So don't you think it gets a little weird when we start saying, well, to go within, we can't really know what's right and wrong. Doesn't that take it like a step too far?
One, each situation is going to be nuanced, right? There's who gets to determine what. That's why we have courts of law and all of this, and it doesn't always end up serving justice. But what I'm saying is, in terms of right and wrong, yes, there's a moral compass. You figure out what your moral compass is to determine for yourself. But what I'm talking about is, if you attack that woman on the street improperly or you kill someone, both of those instances are destructive. So to me, it's all energy. You're either going to have positive or negative energy. And negative, that's all negative because it's destructive. It's going to destroy. But destruction is not always evil. Destruction is not always bad. People look at fire. Oh my God, the fire it's a horrible thing. In esoteric traditions, fire is the initiating principle. Because you're going to burn everything down to start anew. The Mesoamerican, the Maya, they would do a slash and burn technique in the fields. They would burn everything down and renew. It was about fire is the initiating principle. If you get in a tarot, the first tarot card, it has the fire elements and all of that. Fire is in the beginning because it's going to initiate the way for something new. So my point is that everything is energy. It's either positive or negative, or it could be neutral, right? And so when we start determining, well, this is the good guy and this is the bad guy, I feel it's like, I won't say Jesus and Satan, because there's probably a lot of sensitive Christians that might be listening. Let's say Horus and Set from the ancient Egyptian tradition. Set is the hero, Horus is the hero, and Set is the bad guy. Why Set the bad guy? Because he killed, he destroyed Horus's father, Osiris. He dismembered him, cut him up into pieces, and then the mother, Osiris, goes and resurrects him. It's all part of the Egyptian mythology. Set isn't necessarily the bad guy. He's not even a guy. He is a principle. He is a principle, is representing opposition. When you get up in the morning and you get your podcast going and then suddenly, you're not getting the right levels or your computer's not opening up, that is Set in action. Anything that is opposition is Set. So anything, your goal in life, according to esoteric traditions, are to return back to the source. Anything that gets in the way of that, providing opposition, is Set in action. But we need Set. People are afraid of the devil. I say sit down, have breakfast, and meditate with the devil.
Why?
You need to go through the fire to rise up as the phoenix from the ash.
Oh, so is this, and correct me if I'm wrong here, maybe I'm misinterpreting, but I always talk about, like, if the world were a perfect place and there were nothing evil, there wouldn't be a point to it because there would be no feeling of up and down, like accomplishment or whatever. Are you saying something similar here? In a sense, it's like, how can you truly appreciate love if you haven't gone through the or light and dark? How can you appreciate the light if you've always had light? If your whole life has been good and you've been handed everything and everything's good for you, how are you ever going to appreciate that? Versus someone who hasn't had everything, someone who's had to go through struggles and overcome obstacles and work their way through and sustain to get where they're at, they're going to have a different appreciation when that reward comes. And when Julian, Dorey calls them up and invites them to their podcast, they're going to appreciate it because they've gone through the struggle. You know what I mean? To get there. So the point that I'm trying to make with all of this is that we need opposition. Esoteric tradition, recognizes the importance of two complementary aspects, and it's often encoded in architecture. What I mean by that is, in simple terms, you need a male, positive, female, negative, receptive. Male and female must come together to form new life. You need a positive current and a negative current to come together to form electricity. It is through opposition of complementary opposites that the creative principle is manifested. Nothing will be created without some sort of opposition. You need to, in a sense, all of this is your adversary. You need to overcome, you got to make sure the levels are right in order to produce this podcast. Yes.
Two complementary opposites, male and female, need to come together to form new life. Electricity, opposites need to come together to form new life. Psychologically, if you have an adversary and, conflict is okay. It's good. It doesn't have to end in violence. We're all adults. We can have differing opinions as long as we're respectful of one another. Right. We don't need to do the name calling and the trying to tear somebody down with false information. We can have a discussion and arrive at new conclusions. But in order to do this, you have to go through your opposition. That's right. John Anthony West, we were talking about mentor, which we haven't got to yet.
You brought the weave back. I didn't have to do it.
Yeah, I brought the weave for you.
Yeah,
one of the most powerful.
You brought him up with, I just want to make sure, you brought him up with like some European guys who were talking about his aquatic whatever on the Sphinx. But
Schwaller.
Yeah, keep going.
All right. In short, John Anthony West, one of the most powerful lessons I learned from John, something that he would teach, is to give your opposition its due. We're sitting here, right? And I can step outside of myself psychologically and create this observing spectator. I can take myself out of myself and analyze a situation. Oh, am I too loud? Am I too excited? You probably do a lot of this on your own. When you're doing a podcast, you have to check your tonality, your pacing. You have to think of questions. Sometimes you have to step out of the environment. This is good when you're in an argument with someone. Because if you feel yourself fight or flight response going off or you're getting angry, you have the power to move, I think of it in terms of a DJ. I used to DJ, so I move the crossfader on a mixing board to get more of what I need. And if you can take self-inventory of yourself in the moment, you can see what you need. So by doing that, you gain mastery over the situation. It's the top of the pyramid, right? You're the bottom of the pyramid. I'm the other side of the bottom of the pyramid triangle. But over here is this objective truth. There's your truth. There's my truth. Then there's the objective truth. That's what I'm trying to get closest to. And the more that I can pull myself out of myself, because I have my own preconceived notions, my own limited understanding, as do you, our own conditioning from our own backgrounds, our own thought process. But if we can pull out of that and put ourselves in a position of our opposition and get a little bit of empathy and try to understand, that's how you work things out. And people are afraid. They're afraid of challenges. People are lazy these days. They don't want to put the work in. They don't want to go through something that bothers them. Oh, this is going to be too much work.
Right.
The esoteric tradition is about doing the work, putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations, making yourself comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that when the uncomfortable, inconvenient, objective truth smacks you in the face, you're prepared. And that's what initiation's about.
Yeah, and being what you're talking about too, and I think this is so relatable to everything today, being able to put yourself in a position where you can change your opinion when faced with better evidence. That's a lesson. I don't give a fuck what it is, whether it was esotericism that did it or, some fucking guy on a YouTube channel said you should go do this. But like, we need more of that in our society. Like, I appreciate the guys, and this is what I was saying earlier about Billy Carson. If Billy Carson had come out after the West debate and said, you know what, yeah, he made a few good points. I hadn't thought of it that way. I would have respected him so much, because I would have said, all right, there's so much information here. Maybe there are some things you're wrong about. Every fucking person out there is wrong. But when you come out and you go, no, how dare him? He's trying to stop our movement. And you sue him and all this stupid shit, you make yourself look like an asshole because you are so rigidly backed in your corner of, this is my worldview and this is what it is. And in his case, I think it's for financial reasons more than anything. He's
got to protect his investment and his brand.
And it's just so disappointing, because this is how we get somewhere based on the types of conversations you seem to want to have, which is like, all right, let's put it all together and, figure out what's what.
That's what I do with my tours in Egypt. We put all the pieces on the table. We're going to give you the academic, the traditional narrative, and I know it very well, because I studied ancient Egyptian history, the mythology, the language. I know it really well. But in addition to that, I also know the alternative theories really well. And then I have my esoteric perspective. So I try to put all the pieces on the table. When I do my tours, a lot of my competitors do tours with one narrative. Lost technology. We're going to go look for this is what it must be. I throw all the pieces out there, in a sense, unbiasedly, and let the audience, the crowd, the group, decide for themselves.
Love that.
And I've toured with both sides. I've toured with the alternative side, engineer Christopher Dunn, the Kemet School, John Anthony West, who taught me, and then others that are more on the academic side. Dr. David Miano, a historian.
David Miano. I
David
think people
Miano.
were asking, is he alive?
Yeah, he's live. I just led him through Egypt for an Egypt tour.
Someone was asking.
He's famous for debunking online. He does a lot of debunk. He's a historian. He's a general historian and a teacher. He's a great guy.
I got to check him out. But go ahead. Yeah.
And so, and then I've done tours, collaborated tours with other like YouTubers that kind of walk this middle line, like that rely on evidence. Ancient architects, history for Granite, history with Kaylee, and so. The whole point is I like to look at the big picture, put all the pieces on the table. Where I see a lot of the alternatives will often cherry pick certain aspects to fit their narrative. I try to put everything out there and try to give as much information as possible and let the people decide. And then if they ask for my opinion, I'll let them know. And a lot of them are often disappointed, because people come on my tours expecting John Anthony West narrative, my mentor. We didn't get into it, but John Anthony West is known for his redating the Sphinx.
Yes, and you were talking about it based on aquatic
water erosion. Right. Which I don't agree with his final conclusion. While I respect my mentor and I've learned a tremendous amount from him, I do not share all of his conclusions.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.